Hey guys, I'm Kadroth. I know it's been a while. We're going to be going over upcoming strengthenings for 2022 on NA. Now, I did want to say, again, I'm here post-tax season. I've managed to make it through a little bit. I didn't even think I was going to get to record this weekend because my back has been killing me. I think I slept on it wrong or, sat in this chair wrong somehow, but it's feeling better today, so we're going to try to push through this. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now for the strengthenings. Again, there's going to be a little bit of a difference here because not everything's going to happen as part of a campaign like they do with the Interlude. So our first one up here is actually going to be happening in the Las Vegas bout rerun that'll happen this year. This is Summer 4's rerun. Again, this is projected to happen early June, but don't be surprised if it shifts forward, say a week or two, because again, as you guys know, we're ahead of schedule on NA. This may happen very shortly after the Requiem event on NA. So again, keep a close eye out for that. We're sort of predicting that they're going to keep the schedule accelerated for right now, just because they appear to be trying to fit stuff in. They appear to be trying to make sure that they have enough room in the schedule to be able to shift the anniversary like they always do for NA. So don't be surprised by this. This isn't us trying to like catch up or anything. So again, don't be surprised if it shifts forward by like a week or two. So maybe end of May, maybe early June still. But again, as you guys can see, the upgrade for Bunny here is going to be to her second skill. It is the Royal Card skill. This is her actual unique skill that nobody else in the game has. This is going to allow her to randomly shuffle 5 command cards in the same way that the Mages Association Mystic Code, aka Hogwarts, allows you to do. It's a really, really nice thing to have in her kit. This does allow her to sort of get another shot at getting the cards that she needs. And it's also been nice because it gives the party 50% crit damage. But down the line, it's going to get the upgrade here. And this is a huge upgrade for the usability of this skill, because what it's going to allow you to do is basically select an ally whose cards you don't want to appear in the deck that turn. So it will reshuffle the deck and exclude one of the three people from the hand. So really, really nice in that sense, because while yeah, certainly if you're trying to get, say, Bunny's cards and you lock out the third person, you can still get it random between the first and the second person. So like you could get all of Bunny's cards, you could get all the second person's cards, and that may be undesirable. So there's still a little bit of RNG here, but this drastically improves your odds of getting what you want in the hand, particularly if all your goal is to try and form a brave chain or something like that. It's a really, really nice upgrade. Again, it's also going to add the NP gen rate for one turn to the party by 30%. So this is also going to help you if you are using those cards to try and get to an NP. So it's a really, really nice upgrade in that sense. And I have actually been able to use this all the time for farming and critting down annoying waves because of that aspect. Again, maybe you're in a scenario where you've got multiple supports, but let's say it's like a writer node and you don't want the caster's cards to show up. You can lock out the caster, and then maybe at worst you're dealing with neutral cards rather than, say, resistant cards. So there are some really, really nice applications for this. And even on down the line in the Kayanskaya setup, we are able to double this skill up, and that then allows us to get 100% party-wide crit damage, which is very, very strong for the right set of circumstances. And given the fact that it's all on a 5-turn cooldown, yep, we can do it back-to-back turns. So you can do it on turn 1 and turn 2 of a 3-turn loop, so to speak. So again, it's a very, very nice upgrade for it. Really allows this skill to be a lot more usable. So the next upgrade we're going to get is going to come via the Seraph main interlude that's going to happen in, again, sort of mid to late July. Now, I expect this to happen about as it is. It may be a little bit earlier than this, but this should be the first thing we get after NA's anniversary. So for those of you guys that are really hoping to roll on, say, Melt or again like Kama coming up here, yes, that will probably happen after the anniversary, but it is possible that they could run the main interlude before the anniversary. So we'll see. It depends on the schedule shuffling that they want to do, but right now I'm thinking it's going to be slightly after. All right, so first up here is going to be the upgrade to King Protea's first skill, Huge Scale. This is a pretty infamous skill already because it allows you to get HP per turn that makes her kind of nigh unkillable to normal chip damage. So it does give 3,000 HP, but the upgrade then is going to make it so that it gives 4,000 now. On top of that, it's also going to give her essentially NP damage resistance stacks on top of the HP stack. So it's a really strong skill for making her not die to NP damage as well. This makes her really tanky and really a quality solution for going up against certain fights. But you have to be careful because the odds of King Protea dying is probably very slim. It's going to be the odds of everybody around King Protea dying if you're trying to set her up. So this might turn her into a little bit more of a solo monster. It just depends. It is a very strong strengthening. It is very good for her. It definitely resolves one of the issues, which is that she could still just be sort of nuked to death, and it's going to make her pretty damn tanky, all things considered. So it is nice, but again, King Protea has always been one of those fun sort of challenge units to use. Now this is also going to be where we're going to get the upgrade to Melt's second skill. This is a big one that a lot of people have been waiting for. Again, as you guys can see, Sadistic Constitution already increased the attack for 3 turns, but it also reduced your own defense by 10% for 3 turns. Well, it's going to get upgraded, and now it's going to get a Grant Self on Attack Activate buff for 3 turns. What this means is now whenever you attack, you're going to get 15% crit damage for 3 turns when normal attacking, activating first. So every single time you attack, more crit damage, and it's just going to keep stacking over the course of 3 turns. This is insanely good, especially if you consider card lock memes or solo environments. So this is really going to help her get an insane amount of crit damage really quickly on a kit that frankly was already good to begin with. And this is also sort of one of my go-tos for when we start talking about that 3 times 3 turns limitation that they like to put on. They sure as heck didn't do that for Melt. You can really get a lot of increases to her crit damage via this skill. So definitely a huge upgrade for her, especially in terms of carding potential. You start considering her with stuff like double Scotty, and man, is she going to be strong in the right set of circumstances. On top of that, we're also going to get Suzuka Gozen's NP Interlude. So if you guys remember from the Interlude side of things, she got an upgrade to her skill. Now she's also getting an NP Interlude, so she's going to come a long way in a very short amount of time to really improve her capabilities here. So again, her NP was fairly standard, just dealt damage to all enemies and increased the critical damage for 3 turns. But then not only did NP2 become NP1 and NP5 become NP2 here with the NP Interlude, she's also going to gain increased NP generation rate by 20% for 3 turns on top of that. So this is not only going to help her hit harder, but it's also going to help her get back to another NP, because she is going to do the primary capability of that via her charge per turn as well as carding. So this is going to help her carding performance quite a bit, in the hopes that you are able to get to another NP. It's going to make her a really awesome unit for sort of protracted, long drawn out quests, because this is going to help her sort of get to the NP faster. All right, so our next set of upgrades is going to come via the Tokugawa event. This is, like I said, going to be Kama's return. It's going to be her last banner for a while. She hasn't had one, so for those of you guys trying to get Kama, I highly recommend rolling here. But regardless, I do anticipate this one happening after anniversary. Even if they move Seraph Interlude to be before the anniversary, this is the one that I'm pretty positive will still be after. This is going to be late July, so I think trying to shift this somehow to be in front of the anniversary is just going to be nigh impossible for them scheduling wise, especially because we don't have that much time sort of built up in order to do that. So I think this is a fairly safe bet, so hooray for those of you guys planning to roll. But like I said, there will be some upgrades here. So for this one, this is going to be where Kiara finally gets her NP Interlude. Again, this is one that was actually a sad one for me, mostly because you guys know I'm a Saberface fan, so watching Okita for a long time trail Kiara in terms of both damage and capability, I always felt bad for Okita, and then Okita finally gets her buff again at Guda 4 that just happened on NA, and you're like, okay, at least Okita now out damages her. And then we end up with this scenario where all of a sudden Kiara finally gets the NP Interlude that she, honest to God, needed, because her damage wasn't that great to begin with. But yeah, it's sort of been the case with alter egos that their damage has just been low output. So it felt like they really kept Kiara sort of ahead for a long time, and then they finally let Okita pass her for a little bit, and then they just repassed her again with this. So it's still a really good upgrade though. As you guys can see, she already had Ignore Invincibility and Ignore Defense on her NP, as well as healing with her overcharge effect. Instead, we get an upgraded amount of damage and an upgraded amount of healing. So we basically ended up going from 2,000 healing to 5,000. It's a huge upgrade in the healing department. So While everyone will be focused primarily on the damage increase, the healing here is going to be really, really good for her. It's going to make her a lot like her Moon Cancer form in terms of just being a solid challenge unit that's very tough to get rid of, very hard to kill, and can also end up helping the party out a little bit too. So I do think Kiara here is a fantastic AoE alter ego, especially with this upgrade, as it does address, you know, two of her primary concerns there, with the healing output not being that great, and then again the NP damage just kind of being a little lackluster. So especially if you compare this with the third skill that she has here, it's pretty nuts, as at the end of the day she gets an increased heal rate by 50%. So you are looking at this being even more increased than it already is, and so she's going to basically be able to just full heal herself, especially if you're sitting there looping herself quite a bit. So this does make Kiara into even more of a monster than she already was. And now the second buff we're going to get here is going to be the upgrade to Sheherazade's first skill. This is another really nice one, as again, as you guys can see, it already reduced the enemy's gauge by 1 and arts performance by 1, but it's also going to give her NP charge of 30%. So it's very, very strong for her. This actually helps her in a Artoria system. This is going to turn her into, again, as long as we're going up against 333 nodes that she's okay with, a Black Grail looper. So this is actually going to make her pretty damn strong in her own right, because she already had good refund to begin with, and this just sort of helps it even more, as now you get the charge where maybe she has a turn that she's not quite good enough on. So definitely a solid upgrade for her, as it's sort of going to be likened to, in my eyes, the shooting buff, where it just really helps her. Even if you need to get off the ground running and just get 1 NP off, it's going to help her get back to a 2nd NP even if you're not looping, and certainly it's going to help her to be able to 3-turn if you do require that. So our next set of strengthening quests are going to come via the 5th anniversary. The issue here is I'm just going in JP order just to make sure, for, you know, sake of, this is looking like this is going to happen probably July 2nd. It is possible that these could run ahead of the anniversary. I believe they did on JP, but I'd have to double check that. And again, don't be surprised for these to come sooner than you guys think they will. So our first upgrade here is going to be Phantom Siren Song. Yes, Phantom. He's finally getting an upgrade, and this is a fantastic one for him. You can see he had a chance to charm 1 female or Canis for 1 turn. And it goes to charm any 1 enemy for 1 turn and remove their buffs. This is solid. The only downside here is the charm is not guaranteed, so that's, honest to God, a really annoying aspect to him. But we see this with a lot of our low star units, as they just really don't like to, you know, make charm skills go to 100% apparently. But they have started to try and address this over time with certain units. So while he didn't get it here, he certainly got this really nice upgrade to him that actually gives him a lot more usability. So there's not a whole lot of buff removal in our low star unit, so this does help him have some occasional uses. We're also going to get the upgrade to Bryn's Primeval Rune here. This is her 2nd skill, and as you guys can see, it reduced 1 enemy's critical attack chance for 3 turns and their NP damage, and it gets upgraded to the same, but charging the gauge. So now Bryn becomes the 30% charger. This is definitely going to help her out, especially in comparison to the likes of Enkidu, who does a lot more damage, and then Shishou, who also has the niche damage and the 20% charge coming up upgrade as well. So definitely a really good thing for her to have, as this is going to allow her to 3-turn, especially down the line with a pin skills and the Koyanskaya system. So really a good upgrade for Bryn here. All right, so day 2 is going to start off with an upgrade to Darius's 3rd skill. That's going to be really good for him, because Darius has always been one of those units. While he is an interesting challenge unit, he's also been really good as sort of this go-to pick for early game players that maybe want an AoE berserker that they don't want to have to invest too much in. He doesn't really require any investment for his damage output, because he never really had any steroids to upgrade. So if you were worried about his performance in terms of his skills, you could certainly upgrade them, but if you're worried about just more damage output, you didn't have to do anything. So he was good as long as you just leveled him up and got him going, and that was always a nice part about him. But here we also get the upgrade to his 3rd skill that's going to increase his guts to now having a buster resist down of 20% for 3 turns. And the best part about this is not only is this going to increase his damage, but it's also not going to require any investment to be good. again, it's just a locked 20%, so you just get that right out of the gate. It is a huge nice thing that they gave him, and it tells me that the devs actually did sort of understand one of his primary uses and utilities to the player base. Next up, we're also going to get an upgrade to Mama Raikou finally. She definitely needed one, especially in the face of people like Arjuna Alter coming out, especially now that we know that Morgan Le Fay is going to be coming down the line. This is a much needed upgrade. So she finally gets her NP interlude. You guys can see it goes from dealing damage to all enemies to it just deals more damage, and it's also going to get the reduction in critical attack chance by 20% for 3 turns. So this is going to help her, especially since she is kind of squishy at times. She does have, again, that evasion on her primary mana burst skill, but that is always an issue where you're sort of having to choose, do I want more damage, do I want survivability? And you definitely don't want to have to choose between those two. So it's a very, very good upgrade for her in that sense, because this is going to reduce the amount of times that enemies are actually able to land a crit on her, thus sort of putting you in that danger zone or even finishing you off. So really, really nice here. But sadly, she does still kind of need some sort of like charge capability. We've seen that now here recently on JP where they gave it to Altera. Mama Raikou is another one of those units that she's just getting left behind if they don't give her something. She's still got a really good kit. She does have anti-demonic. She does have the ability to generate stars with her Noble Phantasm. That is fantastic. So you are able to follow up an NP wave with her by critting something down, and that does make her really, really nice to be used. But again, this is sort of a concern going forward with her, is the capability of being sort of a farming unit for her. It just depends. She, for right now, is still really good in the crit department, but we got to see what they do with her in the future. Day 3 is going to bring us the upgrade here to David's NP, and just to kind of show you guys, he goes from just having sure hit and dealing damage to now all of a sudden he's got increased damage and an extra niche that deals 200% extra damage to a giant enemy. This is super effective. It's going to be really, really strong for David in the right circumstances. As long as you're going up against a giant enemy, you are going to be really good. And what is a giant enemy, you ask? Well, it's anyone that falls under that category, and that is going to end up being all of the units that you see here, as well as all of the enemies that you see here. So there's quite a few enemies that are still going to qualify as a giant, including the giants themselves. So again, this is a very, very solid thing for him. It's going to be pretty good for him killing. Just understand it's not the same as super large. It's specifically giant. And then next here on day 3, we're going to have the upgrade to Consort U. It's not like she needed an upgrade, right, guys? She was perfectly fine. She was, you know, not the lowest damage of all 4 stars when you adjusted for class. But anyways, she still definitely needed this, and it's pretty apparent that she got what she needed from the standpoint that, yes, they increased the buff removal resistance to 3 turns, and they gave her a 30% steroid for 3 turns. That is really, really strong. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's very rare that you see someone get like, oh, hey, here's a new steroid you didn't have before, and it's 30%. We definitely see 10%. We definitely see 20%. We rarely see 30%. So this is a huge upgrade to her. It definitely helps her be a lot more usable just in terms of damage output, in terms of general performance. So it's definitely a very welcome buff for Consort U, and it's definitely apparent that they are reacting here to the sort of outcry of her damage performance prior to this point. Now on day 4 here, we're going to get a much needed upgrade in the NP interlude for Nezha. Nezha is someone that has for a long time sort of underwhelmed with her performance. She comes out, she's not that good. She doesn't really stand out in too many different ways, and she definitely gets something that she needs here with this NP interlude. Not only is it going to increase the damage she deals to all enemies, it's also going to increase the burn damage to them. As you guys can see, it was 1,000 for 5 turns, and now it's 3,000 for 5 turns. So you're basically going from 5,000 burn damage over 5 turns to now 15,000. So you're tripling that in effect, and it's a really, really solid upgrade for that. So again, they didn't tweak the overcharge by any means, but this does mean that she is going to be able to be a lot more of a like general purpose use Lancer, rather than like, hey, that's sort of the bottom of the barrel. We'll maybe take a really good 3-star. We'll maybe not pay attention to Nezha. Now all of a sudden Nezha has a lot more usability with this upgrade. All right, so for the last one here on day 4, we're gonna have a very interesting one here with Arjuna Archer, not Alter. Again, I had to catch myself there a little bit, but like, this is one that everyone kind of knows. Between Arjuna and Karna, they both had the 25% charge here. That's always kind of been scuffed. Everybody wanted it to be the 30% instead, and they do address that here. It's just not in the way everyone wanted them to. So the entire skill stays the same here, but instead he gets 10% charge every turn for 5 turns. So is this good? Yeah. Does it, address the sort of issue and get him over that 30% hump? Yes. Is it to begin with on turn 1? No. Is it the way that everyone would have wanted them to do it? No. So I think a lot of people would have been happy if they just gave him the 5% charge here. It's not a bad upgrade. I can't emphasize this enough. It's weird because we didn't necessarily expect that. And so this is them trying to kind of say like, hey, let's make it more of a over time, over 5 turns sort of, let's turn him into this challenge unit. I think the issues here is, well, certainly he does have the 5 turns on his debuff immunity, and he does have 3 turn duration on the critical star generation, as well as a lot of the stuff here on the second skill also being 5 turns. His third skill is still just a 1 turn nuke. So yeah, it is on a 5 turn cooldown, but that means he operates on this 5 turn cadence, and that's weird in FGO. So day 5 comes in like a wrecking ball a little bit here. As you guys can see, this is going to be the NP upgrade for Casgil. He's going to definitely be a strong unit. He can actually even loop in the Artoria system, even though he has reduced NP gain rates for specifically his NP. And part of that is because he's a 10 hit arts NP, which is rather insane if you think about that. So he deals damage to all enemies, he increases the party's defense by 20% for 3 turns, and he reduces their defense for 3 turns. But Casgil had always sort of been this like, hey, I'm a pseudo support, yeah, I have a damage dealing NP, but I'm this like hybrid art support / crit support. And now with this NP interlude, they go, fuck it, we're going to make Casgil just solid damage. That's really what they're after here with him. They really are trying to make it so that he is just a very good competitor to the likes of like Helena and stuff like that. He's not going to necessarily give the charge support that she does, but he is going to have a damage dealing NP that punches well above its weight. And he's also going to have the capability of sort of buffing those around him. So he gets party crit damage by 30% for 3 turns, which is going to further add to, again, the insane crit star generation by him. Again, even with his 10 hit NP, he generates a lot of crit stars just himself. So really, really good. He's also going to reduce the defense still. So he can actually be a really good setup man, or he can also end up just sort of being your primary nuker and looper yourself. It just depends, because with the 3 turn stacking, a lot of this means that if you're getting him going, he's going to be stacking that on himself, and it will be very, very strong. And then next we get to Musashi Miyamoto Saber's NP interlude. This is going to be another huge one, as she already dealt damage to one enemy and removed their buffs after the fact, and she increased the NP damage for 1 turn. Well, then we get an upgrade that deals damage to 1 enemy, still increasing that amount of damage. It gets a super effective niche against Alter Ego and Moon Cancer enemies, dealing 150%. It still removes their buffs after the fact, and it also upgraded the overcharge to 30%. So again, it just upgraded from 20%, but yeah, this last part might have been a little bit unnecessary, but well, for anyone criticizing this buff, I hope you criticize the Enkidu buff too, because that was the exact same deal. So it is very interesting to see this, that they really seem to want to make Musashi strong, but this is something that I saw a lot of people criticize when it came out at the time on JP, and I pointed out to people that A, Musashi was sort of always supposed to be the top of the heap for single target saber damage, B, she had been power creeped a lot by the 3 stars, not even the 4 stars in her class, and C is the fact that yes, this is what a SSR Saber interlude looked like. We hadn't really had any prior to this point. The only one that we had was Nero Bride, and Nero Bride had actually always been a little bit on the lesser side of damage due to her supportive capabilities. So the fact that Nero Bride was keeping pace with everyone was just because she had an interlude where no one else did. So everyone was freaking out about this, but yes, this was what an upgrade would and should have looked like. The only thing that you could say that maybe was extraneous here was, again, the extra upgrade here to the NP damage overcharge. So this is a very strong one, and this sort of starts the ball rolling on our single target Saber interludes for a while here. All right, so now we get to the final day of strengthenings for the anniversary campaign. As you guys can see, it's already been crazy up until this point, and this final day includes sort of the upgrades to all the Fate Stay Night characters as a nod for the 5th anniversary. And well, I say all of them, they definitely left some out, but let's not get into that. But the first skill here is going to be Ku's battle continuation, which was already good to begin with, and then they sort of go here's more damage as an apology for making him a 3-star, because he definitely should have been something stronger than that in terms of lore. And as you guys can see, he's going to get unrestricted damage for 3 turns. So again, he doesn't get the 3 times 3 turns sort of deal. He just gets 3 turns. And it's basically going to increase the amount of damage he deals depending on the HP remaining. This is not just his NP damage either. This is also carding damage. So he gets really, really strong the less health he has. And if you guys have ever seen Ku solos or anything like that, you know Ku's going to spend a lot of his time at low health. So it's a really, really strong thing to give him. And again, just so you guys can understand the formula here, it's basically just going to be the case of like, yes, it's 20% plus 30% times the amount of, you know, formula there to figure out how much is going. So the less health you have, the more the 30% here you're going to end up getting. And thus it's going to make it so that it's almost, again, if you're sitting at low health, basically a 50% damage upgrade for those 3 turns. That is crazy good for Ku and just really insane. Apparently, in an effort not to be outdone, Herc instead as well goes, hey, you can't get a battle continuation upgrade. I'm going to get a battle continuation upgrade. So he gets one to his guts as well that changed it to Indomitable. And as you guys can see, it now becomes stackable with other guts, which is insanely good because it means it's going to stack with his own bond CE. It also means he can stack with external sources of guts, but then he also gets a buff that for 5 turns activates whenever a guts is popped, that basically increases his buster performance by 20% for 5 turns. So if a guts pops, he gets a 20% steroid for 5 turns, and this stacks. It literally is just going to keep going up and up and up and up and up. So the more guts you pop, the more of a monster Herc becomes. This makes him insanely good when he was already insanely good in a solo environment where the guts are just going to keep getting popped like every single turn, as he's just going to keep hitting harder. It's basically going to become a you punch me in the face, I punch you in the face sort of deal. You know, I'm just going to keep punching you back harder. And that's where Herc is just going to become really, really nice, because Herc for a long period of time had sort of already gotten to this point that, you know, most players didn't really need him in this niche to do this sort of thing, but now he becomes actually really fun to use in this, and a really good I mean, he already was really good at soloing, but a really, you know, powerful solo option with this because of just the sheer raw power he's going to be able to pump out on top of his NP and everything else. And then we get to Emiya's buff, and Emiya's buff is a rather interesting one. Just to point this out, Emiya always had triple arts in his deck. There's a lot of theories that Emiya was originally supposed to be an arts unit kind of before the release of the game. And you guys can see his 3rd skill had always been Magecraft, which was an arts performance increase. It was really, really weird here because it definitely didn't jive with the fact that he had a Buster NP for a long time. But what this upgrade does for Emiya is, again, not only now at this point did he already have Projection Magecraft, which was a 1-turn steroid of 40% to all card types for him. So this did help him with his NP, but now he gets Trace on EX with this upgrade. And so it's a 2nd upgrade. It's our first ever 2nd upgrade to a skill or interlude here. Really, really strong. It increases the amount of all those card types to 50%, and that's not even the most broken part about it. Instead, it's also the fact that it allows you to change your NP command type between arts and buster. So this is sort of a nod at like Space Ishtar's capability, where she has the ability to change between arts, buster, or quick. He doesn't get quick with his, but he certainly does get the ability to go arts, and that makes him rather insane. As you guys can see, he had a 10-hit NP. So having the ability to change it to arts means, yeah, he becomes quite a monster at looping. And again, that's me showing the uninterluded portion, which he does have on NA. So as you guys can see, he is going to have defense pierce on top of everything else. Really, really a strong kit. I have definitely seen numerous instances of him relatively effortlessly with this on, looping back to 300% charge. Unfortunately for him, well, that doesn't do a whole lot for him. It's just going to reduce the attack. So yeah, you're going to get another 10% attack reduction, which can be nice depending on what you're facing, but it's not going to help his damage output or, again, increase his ability to loop again. So I've seen a lot of like speculation as to, oh, does this make him an arts looper? But remember, this is just a 1-turn duration buff, so it's a rather weird one. He functions kind of wonky in a system. I find that Emiya is actually best used rather than as a 3-turn person, as a I'm gonna NP once and then twice, so that you can basically do it back-to-back times and sort of have him handle 2 waves. Because remember, the obvious downside to this is, because it's 1-turn durations here, you're sort of losing out on that 50% steroid, which can drastically increase his damage, or again, if you don't have it, mean that he's going to do, you know, wet noodle damage for that follow-up NP. So that's a huge issue for him here, and it's why I don't like him in a 3-turn environment, because you maybe use the trace on in order to get him back to another NP so that he can loop again and handle that wave, but then the next wave is not going to do that much damage, which is going to be a problem. And then last but certainly not least, my waifu. Full disclosure here, I just definitely want to say that I'm really happy with the buff that Artoria gets, mostly because I watched for years as people really perpetuated a lot of like bad stereotypes about Saber in the game. I watched as people tried to claim that she wasn't the highest damage for years. I watched as people tried to, you know, make really weird logic arguments of like, oh, well, Salter's stronger if you grail her, which doesn't even hold up because you can grail Artoria as well, and grailing should never come into some sort of argument because you might not want to grail, right? So it's like you really see these weird sort of arguments being made from a lot of frankly Saber haters always trying to hate on her. And well, yeah, she certainly hadn't been the most usable Saber for the entire course of the duration of the game. Certainly she comes into her own once she does finally get the charge skill, but even then, even after the charge skill, there were still some people knocking her from time to time, and I never really understood it. You had some people trying to insist that, you know, other people dealt more damage and stuff like that, and it really didn't hold up. So finally, it seems like the haters got what they wanted. They end up upgrading her as well here with her mana burst. So she gets a rather insane upgrade, which is going to turn it into Dragon Core. So it goes from a 50% steroid for 1 turn to, yep, it's still a 50% steroid for 1 turn, but it's also going to increase her NP damage by 30%. This is going to then stack multiplicatively with the Buster Up and really make her hit hard. And that's not all. It also is going to have the ability to change all command cards of hers in the hand at the time to Buster for 1 turn. And if you think that's not crazy good as well, consider the fact that it's also on a 5-turn cooldown, because that means that we can pop it back to back turns. So if we start getting into the Clean Sky system with cooldown reductions, this means that on, you know, in a 3-turn environment on turns 1, 2, and 3, we can pop Dragon Core on turn 2 and turn 3. So all of a sudden that nasty middle wave with some sort of high health annoying enemy, it doesn't matter as much because we're able to just do it back to back time. So this makes her a really, really strong candidate even down the line. Yeah, certainly we get some 50% chargers coming, but this is one of the reasons that I actually counseled a lot of people on the ticket to end up taking her, because I know there's a lot of Lancer 90+ nodes coming, and it made her a really, really good option for that stuff. So again, to all the haters, I say, nah, fuck you. It's just something that's going to happen naturally. But hey, again, I think you got what you wanted, right? You finally complained that she was the face of the game and she wasn't good enough. Well, now she is. So again, I'm really happy my waifu ends up getting an upgrade, and I, you know, feel the obligatory need to just dab on that. Today's video is brought to you by TokyoTreat and SakuraCo. Both of these brands are premier Japanese subscription box services that give you popular Japanese candy and treats that again are very delicious. If you've ever been curious to try out some of the authentic flavors of Japan, I highly recommend checking out these brands, as they each offer Japanese exclusive items that you are going to enjoy. In TokyoTreat's case, that's going to be Japanese exclusive Kit Kats, ramen, and much more. In SakuraCo's case, that's going to be authentic traditional Japanese snacks from local artisan snack makers that are not easy to access. And both of these are going to be delivered straight from Japan to your door. Their goal is to share Japanese culture to the world through the medium of snacking. If you want to enjoy pop Japanese snacks, you can choose TokyoTreat, but if you want traditional Japanese treats, you can enjoy SakuraCo instead. For both TokyoTreats and SakuraCo's boxes, they each come with a different theme every month, keeping things exciting and fresh. This includes things like Japanese tea, Japanese cake, mochi, manju, Yokan. And last but not least, you'll also get a side plate that's perfectly sized. Enjoy your treats alongside that cup of tea you might be having. For TokyoTreat's box, definitely has a lot more flavors due to the snackability of what's in this box. So there's definitely some really tasty stuff like Japanese exclusive drinks like Coke and Fanta and Ramune. Japanese instant ramen like tasty ramen, soba noodles, and udon. Rare Kit Kat party packs. Again, these are my favorite. Japanese exclusive crunchy chips and salty snacks, basically everything that's savory. Then crazy Japanese candy, chocolate and candies with awesome flavors. So I highly recommend checking out TokyoTreat's box as well, because there's some real awesome goodies that you might never get the opportunity to taste otherwise. Each of these boxes is also going to come with a 24-page cultural guide booklet that explains not only what's in each of the treats, as well as the allergens and things like that, but also where the treats come from and some of the history behind them. It also talks about, in several of the cases, why this is important to Japan for this time of year, as well as, again, some of the backstory of some of the snacks and things that are going on around this time period. So I highly recommend checking these boxes out, as each one of them has some great content for it, not just in the food, but also in terms of history and culture behind it. Most of the boxes come packed to the brim with stuff as well. I was really surprised upon receiving the boxes that there was no real room to fit anything else in them. They definitely seemed stuffed, and for that I was really surprised. Again, I have eaten most of everything in the box, so I can honestly attest to the fact that they are all very delicious snacks that I think you guys will enjoy. I would highly recommend checking out SakuraCo and TokyoTreat in the links in the description below if you guys are interested in, again, subscribing to this box mailing service. All right, our next upgrade is going to come via the Chaldea summer camp here. This is going to be summer 5 for us. Again, this should happen sort of in August for us. And this is, you know, a time period where a lot of people were clamoring for more single target Saber upgrades because they just found Musashis to be beyond the pale. A lot of people were like, wow, that's ridiculous. When is my waifu or husbando going to get an upgrade? And so what we end up getting here is we end up getting an upgrade to Sigurd's Noble Phantasm finally, a much needed one. He was one of the ones that a lot of people were crying for. And you guys can see his upgrade then adds, again, more damage, but also reduces the NP gauge by 1 for enemies. So it makes him a buster unit that drains. And still, he's going to deal extra damage to dragon enemies. So while a lot of people said, like, well, this is an upgrade and we like it, they kind of felt like it didn't do a whole lot for him because his NP interlude damage here did not, like, drastically increase him and, like, take him up to competing with Musashi. But again, just keep in mind, guys, I see a lot of people sort of talk about Sigurd in that regard. Sigurd has extremely high attack power. In fact, he was tied for the highest attack power in the game as of the point of this, though there is someone that comes out down the line that has more. He's still going to be the tied for the second highest with Arthur. So he has really good attack power. And then on top of that, yes, he has always had 100% crit damage here. I think a lot of people that look at Sigurd's NP and think that it needs to deal the most damage here don't really understand that Sigurd is also a really strong carding unit, and he probably doesn't need that much NP damage. Like, he's someone that I've used for a long time on JP because he was the first single target Saber I had, and I have watched this man just casually walk up to people and crit them in the face for 100k damage and just laugh. So yeah, it's definitely a strong unit, and giving him an NP interlude does help him. So guys, don't look the gift horse in the mouth. Our next set of upgrades are going to come to us via the 21 million downloads campaign. Again, it won't be 21 million downloads on NA because we're not quite to that point, but do assume that it will happen around this time, sort of mid-September. Again, this is going to be a very interesting one because we're going to get upgrades to Shuwen and Wu. So Shuwen's upgrade is a fairly straightforward one. Again, this is his Lancer form. So it happens to his third skill here. He already had the invincibility pierce on the skill and the arts performance of 1 turn, making it one of his major steroids here, since it is at 50%. But what it gives him is it gains him critical stars, which is really, really nice. It's 15. And again, just sort of looking at the rest of his kit, he does have absorption. And well, would you look at that? 100% crit damage. So yeah, adding a star bomb into an arts units kit that had absorption and 100% crit damage, really a nice upgrade. So while it doesn't touch any other aspect of the skill, this definitely makes him a lot more usable, and it makes it so that you don't have to, again, try to add stars as badly to the comp in order to be able to have him maximize his effectiveness. Wu's upgrade here is yet another upgrade in a long line of upgrades for Wu in the sort of Wu improvement campaign that it feels like they constantly embark upon. Wu is someone that they've really tried to prop up over time here, and while I have seemed a little bit critical on her, the big reason that I have is because it seems like they tend to have a tendency to forget the other single target 4-star assassins in all of this. In fact, we see a lot of campaigns here where this is supposed to be our sort of like Chinese based campaign for the 21 million downloads campaign that, well, if you guys remember, they all sort of forgot another Chinese assassin that's single target. Y'all might know him as Mr. Fister, aka Yan King, and he's just not anywhere to be seen in the banner for this campaign. So it's like they just sort of forgot about him after all of this time. Yes, in an effort not to digress too much, again, we see them give an upgrade to her torture technique here that, you know, it already had defense reduction for 3 turns of 20%, but now it becomes 30%, so they add an extra 10% to it. And they also gave her buff block 1 time 3 turns to them, so not bad. It is only to a single enemy, but still a really quality upgrade here, as well as a burn of 3 turns to them. So yeah, the burn is not going to be that much damage, but you know, this is just sort of adding to the list of things that Wu continues to do. And next up, we get an upgrade from Shishou Fest coming up here. Again, this is our next Lotto on NA. This will be using Grail fronts rather than, again, our challenge quests in it. It's going to be a very interesting thing. I do anticipate it to be around this time, maybe a little bit earlier, because like I said, they like to keep us ahead due to the fact that, you know, we have the anniversary shift, but also because everyone forgets that Thanksgiving is a thing on NA. So they have a tendency to move everything up by a couple weeks in order to help that out. So don't be surprised this happens a little bit earlier in September than people anticipate, but we are already hard at work on these guides. So the upgrade here is going to actually be to Shishou, aka Scathach Lancer. Again, this is going to be an upgrade to her Primeval Rune. This is going to end up sort of upgrading it in the same way that Bryn got her upgrade. So you guys can see it was a quick steroid of 50% for 1 turn. It was targetable though, and that always made it very strong. But on top of that, now it gets buff success rate of 3 turns by 20% and charges the NP gauge by 20% herself. So this makes Shishou a little bit more able to be used with, say, you know, like a K-scope just to start out with, instead of rather than having to have like an MLB or something. Or maybe you can get the job done with like a 50% charger, a non-MLB event C at 30%, and then now this skill. So there's a lot more that you can do thanks to her having charge. And again, this is targetable, so it does have other applications. But I've had a lot of people ask, you know, why the buff success chance on her, and I think people forget that her first skill here has a chance to fail its primary 2 effects outside of the evasion. So this is going to help her secure the crit damage and the star absorption, because they kind of just realized, hey, you know, this isn't, you know, that good of a part of her kit, the fact that each one of these things can fail. So again, yes, it is going to help her. It is a very nice upgrade for her, and it is going to allow her to be more usable. Then we're also going to get 2 more upgrades in the summoning campaign prior to Guda 5 here, as again, you get another shot at picking up Okita and Hijikata, and those 2 are going to be the ones that get our upgrade. I do anticipate, again, that this might happen a little bit early just due to the Thanksgiving shift, so just pay attention. So again, just to kind of talk about Okita at this point, so now you had Musashi and Sigurd that had both had NP Interlude, so a lot of people were clamoring for Okita to get something. You know, they were feeling like she was relatively neglected and that they really needed to do something for her. So they ended up giving her an upgrade to her first skill. She didn't get an NP Interlude like the other ones. Instead, she gets an upgrade to Shikuchi. And I want to say I am thoroughly displeased with this upgrade, and I want to say why. Not because she's a saber face or anything like that. This happens to be what I perceive a sort of shift in tone from the devs in how they wanted to treat Okita. I think they looked at Okita and they said, hey, this is someone that dies of tuberculosis. She has weak constitution. She's not supposed to be this looper. And that is traditionally how Okita was used. She was used in a lot of speed comps, a lot of min-turn clears, because Okita has actually been sort of this down low, sort of well-kept secret that had insanely good card performance in her kit. A lot of her kits, you know, especially for a year 1 servant, you look at that 5-hit quick card and you go, wow, that's really nice. And then she still had a 1% NP charge rate on her latent kit here, helping out the arts card quite a bit as well. So you start to think about that and you go, wow, her card performance is actually really nice. And so I think the devs actually tried to say, hey, let's not go into that further. Instead, let's try to incentivize them to rather than NP and card after the fact, we're going to give the Shikuchi upgrade that increases the quick performance still, but gives an on attack activate buff that increases attack by 20% for 1 turn when normal attacking activating first. So this then changes the game to, hey, now all of a sudden we want to card before the NP. So this to me is the devs kind of trying to push you the other direction rather than the direction everyone wanted to play Okita. So while it is an upgrade, while it does help her damage, I hate it. And while it does still give her the upgrade in the sense that, like, yes, now you have flexibility. You know, if you wanted to, you could pre-card the NP to get more damage out of the NP itself. That is an option, so that aspect of it's not bad, but it feels like they're trying to do that rather than, again, just making the steroids say better, or perhaps making Shikuchi like 2 or 3 turns. Yeah, that might have been strong as well, but again, it's sort of, to me, them kind of trying to change the way that people played her. So I'm not a huge fan of this upgrade, and I feel like she ended up getting jobbed a little bit here as they were trying to give her some kind of upgrade without giving her an NP interlude like the other one. So it is sad. I feel sad for Okita in this sense. While it is a good upgrade, it's not what I would have wanted for her. Next up, we have Hijikata's buff here, and he gets an upgrade to his disengage skill. This was, again, at a time where Qingong had been out now for a while, and a lot of people looked at sort of the 1 HP memers like Hijikata was and said, like, man, it'd be really nice if they had a guts. It'd be really nice if they had some ability to, you know, save themselves so that we could Qingong them down to nothing and then have them in peace so that they could get a ton more damage out of their stuff. And that's exactly what Hijikata got. He finally gets the one thing that he needs in his kit. He gets the, again, still the debuff removal and the recovery of HP, but now he gets a guts that is 1 time 3 turns that revives at 1 HP, and it's stackable with other guts. So this is really nice. The fact that it's stackable allows him to sort of, be protected if you do have another guts from another source, and there's a reason for this. But it is kind of interesting because it does feel like they're like, okay, well, we did it for Herc, now let's do it for other people. And we see this here, but it does make sense in the sense of Hijikata, because Hijikata's Bonsi also had guts. In fact, this was how you were supposed to get guts on Hijikata prior to this point. He had it via his Bon Tensi. The problem was the Bonsis are not that great, so a lot of people don't like to use it. His is not bad because it did have the crit damage of 30% on it, but again, a lot of people would prefer to use an actual C that they could level up and maybe get a lot more impact out of. So it just depends on sort of what you're trying to do. Again, this is a very, very nice upgrade for him, though. It makes him a lot more usable. It means you can use any CE you want on him now. So you could say, hey, here, we're going to give him starting charge and allow him to get to his MP really easily and still have guts, you know, rather than going like, oh, well, now we had to take the Bonsi, or maybe we had to do it via, you know, like Anniversary Blonde or something like that, you know, sort of getting rid of the ability to do a plug suit. So this made him a lot more usable with the 1 HP meme and allowed him to just hit really, really hard, especially on top of the fact that he already had his 3rd skill that allowed him to crit really hard depending on his HP as well. Next, we're going to jump forward in time quite a ways here to November. Again, at this point, yes, this might be a little bit of a shift in the schedule of this because you're getting closer and closer to Thanksgiving, but the shift should be minimal. It should just be 1 week or less at that point, depending on what they want to do for Thanksgiving. But again, this is the Imaginary Scramble pre-release campaign. This is going to be our Lost Belt 4.5. If you guys want to think about it, it occurs in a time period prior to Lost Belt 5. So again, it is a very interesting and amazing event. I hope you guys enjoy it, but we will get a couple upgrades here. So the first one is going to be the upgrade to Abby's Prayer of Creed C. Again, this is just normal Abigail, not the summer version. This is her single target foreigner version here, not to have any sort of confusion. But again, looking at this was already her charge per turn and the party's MP damage for 3 turns, a very powerful skill. But they decided to go, hey, you know what? There's sort of a little bit of an issue with usability here, so we're going to give her 30% charge. So this is damn good now because, again, down the line with Korean Sky system, we're able to 3-turn now with this with the pens. But especially the fact that it is 30% rather than, say, like a token 20% here, this doesn't feel like this is just supposed to be a, hey, let me use this with like a normal K-scope or something like that. This definitely feels like this design, this upgrade happened. At the time it was weird, but this feels like already at this point they knew appends were a thing and this choice was made in light of that. So this is an interesting upgrade for me to analyze and to look at, because I feel like already at this point in November they knew that the append system was coming next anniversary after that. So already you're kind of like 7-8 months out from that upgrade, but it appears like they knew what they were doing. Next up, we get a much needed upgrade to Yang. Again, Yang Gifei here are our single target arts 5-star foreigner from New Year's in the past year here. It definitely had a little bit of a wonky kit when she first comes out. The first step to helping her was Artoria existing. That really helped advance her and make her a lot more usable. The second step here was this upgrade, and so we get an upgrade to the first skill. And the issue with the first skill is, while it was powerful, it's self-invincibility for 1 turn, NP gauge charge 10% every turn for 3 turns, and a crit star bomb. The issue was it had a 500% chance to draw the attention of male enemies to self by 300% for 1 turn. The issue with this sort of thing is that, again, it's gendered. So the fact that there is a restriction on the skill means that it's not always going to taunt. And the problem with that is Yang's third skill here sort of has an effect where it's going to put burn on an enemy when she gets hit. And you definitely want the burn, because the burn is going to allow her to deal extra damage with the overcharge of her NP. It is a super effective modifier, so you want there to always be a burn on the enemy that you're hitting. The easy way to do that was Living Flame here, the third skill, but she had to get hit in order to proc that by the enemy. So yes, there are command codes that help you address this. That was the go-to solution right out of the gate for Yang. But even at that time when Yang first comes out, there's only, I think, 1 command code that even has burn on it. Now there's 2 at least. So there's going to be an increasing amount of command codes that have burn to help this sort of thing. But yes, it is a very interesting issue that sort of she had this male only restriction with the first skill, and it didn't quite always get the job done. So the upgrade instead changed it. She now gets more crit stars on her bomb here, up to 25, up from 15. And then she's also going to end up getting it so that it's all enemies rather than just male. So now you don't have to worry about like, oh, it's just some monster enemy that doesn't even have the male trait. Now it will also taunt them. So it's a really good upgrade for her general purpose usability. And last but not least here, we get a NP Interlude to MHXX. Again, this is going to be another really nice one. As you guys can see, she had a 4-hit single target arts NP. She is, again, another foreigner here, and really our only 4-star foreigner until we get MHXA idle, in a sense, down the line with the Waltz event. So, but that's still going to be a ways into the future. But still, at this point, this definitely helps her out, because again, she already started out with the ability to deal damage and increase it for super effectiveness against a Saber class servant. She also had a overcharge effect that increased her attack for 1 turn prior to the NP by 20%. So again, the upgrade here then increases the amount of damage, but it's also going to increase the super effective damage against Saber class enemies. So it just makes her even stronger. And I've talked about this before, because there's a lot of single target archers out there in the game that do not have NP interludes. In fact, it's a huge issue amongst the SSR single target archers. And I've talked about this numerous times before, how you end up having people like MHXX, like MHXA, like Super Orion, like again MHX, that just all end up sort of dogpiling that same niche and kind of eroding sort of the advantage that actual archers have, because you end up with people that just have these sort of super effective modifiers against one class in particular. So again, it's a very good upgrade for XX, but it certainly just increases the problems going on with the single target archers right now. And then for our next upgrade, we go to the actual Imaginary Scramble event. Again, this will just happen after the pre-campaign and probably will happen prior to Thanksgiving. Again, you guys can see the end date right there on JP kind of being pretty ideal for that sort of thing. So again, there could be some overlap, but we'll see. So the upgrade here is going to be to Gilda Ray Caster. Again, it is a solid upgrade for him because he just needed literally anything. So he gets his sort of unappealing 1 enemy servant's NP damage for 1 turn. And it gets changed to Blasphemy Aesthetic here, which is all enemies NP damage, so it's no longer servant restricted. It reduces their arts resistance and buster resistance for 3 turns by 20% each if you have it at max rank. So again, the fact that it's 3 turns as well is also nice. He's not going to end up being a looper for you guys. You guys know he is a buster NP. He doesn't have any charge in his kit, and frankly his damage was pretty ass before this point, but this does certainly help him in just general purpose use, because anything would have helped at this point for Brynhildr. So we also end up seeing this later on down the line, where we get an adjustment to the same skill on Janu, because again she ends up having a similar skill to this, and it also gets changed to all enemies. Right now in the home stretch of our strengthening campaigns here, we've got again the Heian Kyo pre-campaign. This is going to be the pre-campaign for Lost Belt 5.5. This is going to be one that happens after Lost Belt 5. So again, obviously spoilers here are going to be a thing, but we're going to get quite a few upgrades here. And first one up here is going to be an NP interlude for Sakura Kintoki Berserker. Again, Kintoki is someone that has always been good over the historical course of the game. Certainly we had things like break bars that came into play that sort of kind of tried to slow his roll a little bit, but he's always been nice because he's been a 50% single target, sorry, 50% charging single target berserker. So that has had numerous good uses because it doesn't care what class you're facing, it just kind of works, right? And he's always hit hard, but he had begun to lag behind quite a bit in damage, and so we end up seeing him getting an NP interlude here. And you guys can see he already had ignore defense, which is always nice, and a chance to stun. But then we get that upgraded in terms of the damage, and we also get a reduction in buster resistance after the fact by 30% for 2 turns. So this does mean that again with his gorilla deck here, his triple buster deck here, that he's going to be able to card hard after the NP and be able to follow it up with even more damage and be able to just sort of improve his overall card performance. So this does help him in terms of, hey, maybe I get that ability to not only handle 1 break bar but maybe 2, or maybe I'm going to be able to be strong at handling the mid waves on a 90+ node, where maybe there's just 1 high health enemy that he's not going to care what the class is, he's just going to go hard at them. So this definitely really helps Kintoki out, especially in the break bar era. I do think this is a very, very solid one, because again, it's a 30% reduction there in buster, and while it might not affect the NP, if you get another MP off, it certainly will, and he's going to hit real hard with that. Next up is Kato Danzo. Again, she was another unit here that really desperately needed a NP interlude, and that's exactly what she gets. She dealt damage to all enemies with her NP and extra damage against demonic niche enemies, but we get upgraded to still more damage there, and then again increasing the party's buster performance by 20% for 3 turns. So if you manage to get Kato Danzo to another NP herself, boom, she's good. She's going to hit even harder with the next one. But also on top of this, this could be a good setup for someone else. Let's imagine a scenario where you have Kato Danzo take out the first wave, and then maybe Kintoki, like we were just talking about, handle a mid wave. All of a sudden Kintoki's going to be hitting even harder because he gets the 3 turns of 20% buster up. So this makes her a really nice sort of like early wave handler and setup unit. This is them leaning more into her intended use, and I really like it for that. This is a very, very solid upgrade for Danzo. So again, now we get an upgrade to Ibaraki Doji Berserker and her second skill. She had the disengage here, and it gets upgraded to Rampage. It's going to still remove 1 ally's buffs, but now it becomes targetable rather than it just being for her. It's going to recover their HP, so it's fairly nice in that sense. This is a 2500 HP heal, and it's going to increase their critical damage for 1 turn by 100%, which is a very, very huge amount. On top of that, it'll also increase a Shuten Doji ally's attack for 3 turns by 30%, and if they're alive on the battlefield, it will charge her own gauge 20%. So if you're using her in tandem with Shuten Doji, she will then get a 20% charge. So this does help out her usability, but it sort of restricts her at the same time to having to be used with Shuten. So it's a weird upgrade in that sense. It's a good one, and it definitely is nice that it's targetable now, especially with that 100% crit damage. It can also be really good for putting on a Shuten Doji ally, but it's still really weird in the way that it's conditional and how it works. So again, a very solid upgrade. And okay, so now we're going to get another upgrade here in the actual Heian Kyo release. Again, this should be happening, you know, in the middle part of December here. It'll depend on schedule shifting and what they want to do, but there is a summoning campaign in here for Ibaraki, for Ibuki. Again, another 50% charging AoE Saber, so a really, really solid option coming into the game there in Ibaraki. But a little known upgrade here is the 1-2 Babbage that happens as part of this, and he gets an upgrade here to his 3rd skill, his Overload. as it becomes steam engine output rising. You guys can see it already increased the NP damage for 1 turn, but then on top of that, it's going to become 3 turn duration. It's also going to increase the critical damage for 1 turn by 100%, give him a crit star bomb on top of that of 30 stars. So really nuts in that regard, and really strong for him. Babbage had always been one of the units out there that just had really good damage output for your AoE 3-star casters, but you know, certainly in the future he is going to get surpassed in some ways, but still this is a very nice upgrade for him. And then to round it all out, we have Carnimus. Again, this should occur in the last part of the year unless they, you know, schedule shift us on NA, but there is going to be one last upgrade here in this event, and that's going to be Beowulf. He gets a strengthening quest to his 3rd skill here. His battle continuation also gets some love, as again, it was just a one-time 4 turns 2000 HP revive. And again, it becomes Patience of Old Age, where yeah, it's still the same guts, but then it's also going to increase his crit damage for 3 turns by 50%, and it's also going to give him 2 new niches against dragon and giant enemies for 3 turns, 50% each. So he gets 2 power modifiers here, and there could certainly be again quite a few enemies that would be usable on. So I do think that this is a very solid upgrade for Beowulf. It just lets him stand out, gives him a unique set of enemies that he is going to be sort of the go-to against. So a very good upgrade for Beowulf. Well, as always, that one ended up being longer than I thought it would. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I just wanted to go over and cover for you guys the strengthenings and the interludes for this year, because there's quite a bit coming and they're quite game-changing in that sense. So again, I hope you found this informative. As always, guys, feel free to check me out on Twitch weeknights at 7 p.m. Eastern, where I always stream FGO. Also, feel free to follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. The link will be in the description below. Have a good one, and see y'all later.